Boss stage one. All right. You can do this. I remember how to do this. Okay, stage two.
My name is Dr. Nora Wilson. I am Associate Professor of Low Brass here at Brandon University. And my pronouns are she, her.
My name is Kenley Kristofferson. I am a composer from Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada here, and I'm a music educator here in my office at Lord Selkirk Regional Comprehensive Secondary School in Selkirk, Manitoba. And my pronouns are he, him.
I first asked Kenley to write a piece for me back in, I believe it was 2016, which ended up being O Magnum Lux, which was a lovely trombone solo with piano, loosely based on ideas of Morton Lauridsen. Kenley later wrote another piece for me while he was doing his master's here at Brandon University. When I came up with the idea of Arcadia Trombonica, or that idea of wanting to create a trombone piece with 8-bit accompaniments, similar to the music that you'd hear in any kind of those old Nintendo games from the original Nintendo Entertainment System. I honestly couldn't think of any other composer I'd want to compose this piece because, one, Kenley's a wonderful and brilliant composer, but also he's like a mega nerd, like the biggest nerd I know. So
These are true words.
These are like the biggest qualifications.
And Nora is no slouch in the nerd department either. Playing through all of Castlevania with trombone is some serious nerd cred, which I appreciate. We knew that we wanted to be retro inspired, but we also wanted to take it somewhere. So we thought about, like, it can't just be an old Nintendo game, or it can't just be like kind of this well-trodden ground, as people have used 8-bit in a variety of ways. But the way that made a lot of interesting creative sense to us was if we take a variety of retro game sounds and we kind of smash them together. So it's not just Nintendo, it's Atari, it's Commodore 64, it's Sega Master System. And then what happens when we mix and blend these sounds in ways that are interesting? For example, the chiptune scene right now is exciting and interesting and dynamic, which is kind of taking old retro sounds and making dance music or kind of modern music. That's really cool. That's a really cool idea. So what can we do with those ideas in the contemporary classical realm, where we can take them somewhere they've never been before? And then to compound that, when we take this mashup of different 8-bit sounds, we can run them with modern effects like tape delay or stereo delay or echo or a variety of modern digital audio workstation effects and processing. Now we can take it one step further. And I think that's when we really started to hit our stride with what the sound of this was going to be. Not just like the ink on the page, but like what the colors were going to be like, what the character of the music was going to be like. It's turned into something I think we're both really proud of. And my degree in my undergrad is classical euphonium. Nora, of course, is a fabulous trombone player. So we have a pretty good handle on low brass. Obviously, Nora is exceptional and far better than I am at the trombone. So when I think something is difficult or technical or challenging, Nora usually gets it kind of right out of the gate. So that was part of it, was navigating how technical we're going to make this. Going back to chiptune, for example, there is this Game Boy cartridge that was meant as a way to play in the sound programming. It's called LSDJ, or Little Sound DJ, and it was released in Japan. And that has become the workhorse of chiptune music. And it was just meant as a fun thing. But one of the amazing things about Game Boy in the last 10 years is that it's really gone from a gaming console to a musical instrument. And that has been a big change. So I started to learn and understand kind of the sound programming of that. But I knew early on it had to be more than a Game Boy. Because, like, again, that ground is well trodden. We have to find something new and different to do. In my exploration, there was a plugin set by another engineer, composer named Andrew Aversa, and his company, Impact Soundworks, painstakingly sampled the Commodore 64, Atari, Game Boy, Sega Master System, Sega Genesis, Super Nintendo. They painstakingly built this engine in something I can put a keyboard to. That was a really transformative discovery and tool in this whole process. And then, of course, just like using that in a modern digital audio workstation where I can apply reverb, I can apply compression, like I can do all the modern things, but with these old sounds that, again, I can just use with a MIDI keyboard, which was super helpful.
When we conceived of this idea, we knew we'd need money for it. We applied for 3 grants. We applied for one from the Brandon University Research Committee, or BERC. We also applied for a Manitoba Arts Council grant and a Canada Council for the Arts. And we were shocked that we actually got all 3 of them. The price for the commission was somewhere around like $7,000 or $8,000 perhaps. And we actually had a pool of close to $20,000 or just over $20,000 between the 3 grants. We're like, well, what are we going to do with this extra money? Like, obviously we can use some of the money to help us get down to the International Trombone Festival, which we did, where I premiered this piece. But we also thought like, oh, it'd be fun to add some sort of visual component to this. It being retro gaming inspired, we should make something that like kind of looks like a video game. But then I believe Kenley was the one that came up with the idea, like, well, let's just make a game for this, because it's going to be pretty much just as easy as hiring an actual artist to create these things. And he happened to know a game designer in Winnipeg by the name of Adrian Cheater, who helped us with this. So we had help with the programming aspect of the game that will be released soon from Adrian. And then Kenley actually flexed his artistic muscles quite a bit and designed, I would say, most, if not all, of the sprites and art in the game, which was really fantastic.
It is my wheelhouse. It's like that NES look. So, we did some studying and we had to put it together in a way that we could streamline. I needed to be in charge of the art because I can't be the middleman if we between the programmer and the artist. We're like, we need a bird sprite, or we need this to rotate. I just knew I needed to be able to do it. I think I did the art over about 3 or 4 months. Like, there's a lot of art, even in a small video game. There are a lot of things to make, but it turned out really great. And so now the performance of the work is interactive. Some of the things we talked about in the grant itself is that now it's kind of an interactive media display where you can play it with a video of like a perfect run of the game, and you get the whole story of the game, because it's really a whole game kind of compressed into 10 minutes. But if you want to have someone on stage playing the game with you, like during the performance, that absolutely works. And it's really exciting. It enhances the music, and the music enhances the game. It becomes an experience where the whole is more than the sum of its parts. It's a tough game, I will tell you.
When we're talking about research within music, we do have academic research that is closer in relation to what you'd see in other humanities kind of research, where you might be researching the history of a composer or a piece, or you might be looking into a certain trend in music. But for me as a performer, most of my academic research falls under the creative activity kind of label with that. So what I do as in my job for my research is to try to do lots of performances, obviously the creation of new works like this one, a little bit of like sort of more traditional kind of research, but it's mostly about creating music and creating music projects, especially stuff that's generated from me and people I choose to collaborate with. And this particular piece is a contribution to the trombone repertoire. There's a lot of pieces for solo trombone and recording, but not many pieces that get played over and over again that become like staples of the repertoire. And I really hope that this one does become a go-to piece for a lot of people. I think it's really great. I think it's super fun. I think it's challenging. And when I was approaching Kenley with this piece, I said, anybody who wants to play it should be able to play it with minimal technology considerations. Just a projector or TV, and then plug and play with the audio. It should be like that simple. Otherwise, people won't play this piece. And then I also wanted it to be accessible for like an advanced undergraduate student. So I didn't want the range to be crazy. It only goes up to a high B flat in this piece. It's got some real challenges to it, but a good undergrad could play this piece.
And in the case of writing, I feel like both Nora and I have been researching the rep for our whole lives. A big part of it is knowing the conventions of 8-bit music, and then knowing when to follow the rules and knowing when to break them. Mm-hmm. Because the original NES, for example, had a sound chip that had 3 monophonic audio channels, so one note at a time, and then 1 channel for static. So Now, of course, we would never do that now. We don't have to do that. That technology is 35 years old. So when I can do something in a modern digital audio workstation, the sky's the limit. And I can combine things in interesting ways. We have to know what each sound chip can do and then find ways to subvert that in interesting and unique ways. The other part of it is knowing what kinds of sounds we're trying to reference. So that might be what a drum pattern is that is frequent, or the way that voices move together in audio in a sound chip, or maybe a pad-like sound, say from a Sega Master System. There's one part in Movement 7 where you have these long chords that might be impossible for a 1986 Sega Master System. But when we amp them up, we can create these new beautiful colors and sounds with this super old hardware in new and unique ways. So part of the thing that we've had to do is dig into the rep, dig into what we're trying to cite in a research sort of way, and then where we can take it from there. Because we can't just reuse old music. That is just not what we're doing. But we can honor those pieces with certain moments, certain kinds of sounds, and then use that in our own individual and creative ways. This piece has garnered some interest, which is something I think we all strive for as musicians, is to make something that matters, to make something that connects with people, and to do something unique and interesting that's never been done before, but still connects with other folks. When we went to the International Trombone Festival, I invariably got questions about, will there be a band version? And we thought, like, this would be a great way to connect with more people. So the band version takes all the backing track that we've made and now takes the trombone melody, and then without changing a lot of the notation, we've reinterpreted it to move across a band ensemble, and then also is supported with other colors, other textures. So now one of the interesting things that's happening is you now have 8-bit accompaniment that we've made new with modern hardware that we've now combined with acoustic instruments in a variety of colors and sounds. And so like now the layers of old meets new are really colliding. Not just old meets new, but synthetic meeting acoustic. It's never been done quite like this before. And that's really exciting. So the ASU performance is on Thursday, February 6th at ASU Gamage in Tempe, Arizona. And I've been in contact with the conductor. And there are some things, for example, that work in a very obvious way with a soloist, but with an ensemble are a little bit trickier. So we've been navigating those changes. It can't just be a one-to-one connection. So there'll be kind of two different things at times. But the spirit of Arcadia Trombonica is absolutely there with Arcadia for band.
And it is so colorful. I haven't heard an actual performance of this, but Kenley did play the MIDI version of this, which has pretty realistic sounding instruments and everything. And it brings such a different element to the piece. The wind ensemble version, it's so colorful and really just sparkly, for lack of a better word. And I'm so excited to hear it. I think that this sound has been around long enough and has achieved enough sort of mainstream kind of success. It's like people know the sound of old Nintendo games, because who couldn't hum the first few bars of the Super Mario theme, for example? I think people, even if they haven't played video games, are at least going to be kind of familiar with that sound. But one of the things that we really wanted to do with this is not just to create a piece that uses 8-bit music, but also something that conveys the experience of playing one of those old games. Even if you were just listening to this piece and just imagining kind of what's going on in the background, you'd probably see the title screen kind of sound. You'd probably think, oh, that kind of sounds like adventure starting on level 1-1 or whatever. You'd get the kind of feeling that, oh, I'm approaching a boss battle, like with this trepidation kind of sound. And then, of course, like the boss battle theme. Kenley has also mixed in a few sound effects that are very familiar to video game audiences. There's a sound of the boss dying. There's the sound of the main character dying, which I believe was a Mega Man inspired sound. And then there's the sound of the player putting the next quarter in the machine. to continue. It's just a fun piece, especially with the visuals. It's just a really interactive and fun ride. I want lots of people to play this. I want to be able to go, 5 years down the road and type in Arcadia Trombonica onto YouTube and see lots of undergrads playing this, lots of trombone players in general. I want this piece to be played because I think it's really great. And I think it's so fun. And it's such a great audience pleaser. And I hope that there's more pieces like this. We've certainly had interest in adapting this piece for other instruments too. An old student of mine sent me a message a little while ago saying they have this kid in his band that plays saxophone that really loves the piece and would love to play it on saxophone. So Kenley was very kind to say it's just a couple clicks of the buttons and we can make a part right up.
When we played it at the International Trombone Festival, it got like hoots and cheers. Yes. And like I haven't been to a lot of trombone concerts where people like cheer. It is like kind of a ride. Like we've made it in a way that you could do it just with the audio and that would be fine. You could do it press play on the video and it works. You could have someone play along with it. So you can choose how interactive you'd like it to be and how easy it can be. Because I think some people get a little scared about electronics because sometimes you have to trigger things. You have like a laptop and you've got to click buttons while you're playing. And that is not this. We've made this as accessible as possible. And for folks who are unsure what the piece is, like we've got videos of us playing. Nora and I made a great video of us kind of acting through Arcadia Trombonica that really seals the deal about what kind of experience this is. So there are lots of resources to make this piece accessible. And like Nora said, we both think it's just really fun. It's a really fun piece.
I think as soon after the piece is actually finished, I mentioned to Kenley, like, well, we have to do a sequel now. It's like if you remember like how games worked back in that era, so often they'd have a game for the Nintendo, like Metroid, for example. And then when the Super Nintendo came out, which has, 16-bit graphics, 16-bit music and all that, they took the same name and they just put Super in front of it. So it was Super Metroid for the Super Nintendo. And so it's just makes sense that we should do Super Arcadia Trombonica, which is in the very early stages of development here, but we want to, of course, make it bigger. We want this to be for trombone and 16-bit music and full wind ensemble, so a concerto. And with this one, I want Kenley just not to hold back and just put any crazy things he wants in terms of the trombone part. It can be hard, because, you might as well go for it on this. So we're really excited for that. This first one was sort of more like 2D side scroller kind of inspiration. This next one, we're hoping to have more of an RPG inspiration behind it.
And for Nora and I, we have a lot of nostalgia and love for 8-bit. But I think it's fair to say that our hearts are really in 16-bit. Like that's where my heart is in Super Nintendo. And so I think that Super Arcadia Trombonica is going to really feature some of our best work to date, like our best collaborative work. So we're pretty excited.
I realized at the end of this too that I have about 23 minutes worth of music from Kenley, and when we do Super Arcadia Trombonica, it'll get to be over 30 easily. And that'll be like a full album that we can release for it. So there will be an album which will include the 2 trombone and piano pieces as well. They can find the video on Kenley Kristofferson's YouTube page.
That is where you can find that. You can purchase the piece on my website at kenleykristofferson.com in the shop. You can click there, and then Arcadia Trombonica is out right now. And as you click on it, you get all the appropriate backing tracks, video. The game, we're still working out just the last couple of bugs. So we are on the last stretch of that. Arcadia for band has to go through some premieres still, so it is not immediately available, but it will be very, very shortly. And then, of course, Super Arcadia Trombonica.
I'll just put in a plug for Kenley. He's an amazing composer and has so much great music, and you should listen to and or play his music.
Oh heavens! Well, I'm very happy to plug Nora also. Bring her into your school, get her to work with your kids. She's a great educator, a fabulous low brass educator, and it is worth every penny and every minute because we learn so much every time she comes in. Consider following us on the Instagrams and see what we're up to creatively. There's a lot of Arcadia news and shenanigans right now, so do consider following me at Kenley Kristofferson on Instagram.
And I'm at Nora Wilson Trombone on Instagram.